Good afternoon, and welcome to the Cincinnati, USA Regional Chambers Business Briefings. This series is an extension of our Chamber's leadership programs to help you and your business navigate this time. I'm Amy Thompson, Senior Director of our leadership programs, and I truly thank you for joining us today. We invite each of you to share with us how we can help you weather this storm. If you have not yet, we'd encourage you to sign up for our emails. Michelle, please advance the slide. Thank you. I understand there were technical challenges. Can you hear me? Thank you. We're back at it. Hopefully you've had a chance to use some of these great resources, our helpline, our emails, or our resource hub. They're designed for you as the leaders as well as your business. Today, the focus of our conversation is on minority businesses. We will really focus on what are the resources that are available, as well as hear some inspiring stories on how some great leaders are navigating this time. We are also fortunate, as we know many of our minority businesses are also small businesses, and we have a real-time update from our local SBA. You all have joined this briefing in the listen-only mode with your microphones muted. The questions for our experts can be submitted in writing through Zoom's Q&A window. We are also fortunate to have a colleague, Pat Griffiths, who's with us to help answer many of those technical questions along the way. This webinar will indeed be recorded and available on our website by tomorrow. Let's jump in. We are so fortunate to be joined by an incredible panel of great leaders here locally. Darren Reedus, the Executive Director of the Minority Business Accelerator at the Cincinnati, USA Regional Chamber. Joshua Stutzman, Branch Manager of the Cincinnati office, U.S. Small Business Administration. Derek Brazil, the Managing Partner and Development Director of Mortar. And Bridget Harris, the President of BTH Construction Delivery. And Josh Williams, the CEO of Surgy Health. Just a great lineup today. Our conversation will be broken into a couple different segments. The overall context, an update from the SBA, a conversation about resources and collaborative efforts that are happening that could help you and your business, as well as some inspiring stories on how great leaders are navigating this time. So let's jump in and start with my friend and colleague, Darren Reedus. Darren, welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us today. It's been a pleasure working with you. And I am excited for you to just set the stage for this conversation. Help us understand big picture what's going on.
Yes, thank you, Amy. I'm just delighted to be a part of this discussion this afternoon. Of course, we know that there are very just unique and extraordinary challenges that minority businesses face. We want to address a lot of that here today, but we also really want to try to frame up some positive just resources, stories, inspiration, to your point about just getting through this together. I'd be remiss if I didn't just begin by a formal welcome from all of our partners. You see on the screen here, the Cincinnati Minority Business Collaborative is a group of intermediaries throughout the region that are focused on this work day in and day out. And so from the Greater Cincinnati Urban League, HCDC, the Ohio Minority Supplier Development Council, African American Chamber, GCMI, the Hispanic Chamber, Mortar, SCORE, just really want to extend a wholehearted welcome. This is work that we are extremely passionate about and really excited to be able to share some resources. As Amy mentioned, we're going to first hear from Josh from the SBA, and then I want to come back and really begin to dig into some resources. There's a lot of things going on, and I'm really excited to be able to share just some ideas and some thoughts and some tips to help us get through this. So without further ado, Amy, I'll turn it back over to you, and we'll get started here.
Great, Darren. Thank you for painting that big picture. And it truly is great to see what a collaborative effort there is here locally as we really try to lift up our minority businesses. And thank you for your leadership there, Darren. So as we think about the impact to our small businesses and specifically minority-owned business community, we want to understand better what's really happening right now at our local SBA. We'd like to bring on at this point and welcome Joshua Stutzman. He is with the U.S. Small Business Administration here locally. Josh, we're so thankful to have you. And I know that you were with us just a couple of weeks ago, and certainly a great deal has changed since you were with us. Joshua, if you wouldn't mind, walk us through really what has changed in the last couple of weeks to where we are today. Certainly we know there were announcements that just went out this morning. This is a rapidly changing environment, and we look forward to hearing from you. Joshua.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Amy. Hello to Darren and all the participants. Thanks for having me on today. I did want to go over a couple updates and some clarification through the SBA and some of the changes. As Amy mentioned, I was on a few weeks ago, and that was before the CARES Act went into effect. What we've seen, a lot of small businesses, there was some confusion on the differences between the EIDL loan, which is the economic injury disaster loan, the EIDL advance, which is a part of that, and the PPP program, which is the Paycheck Protection Program. And what I wanted to do is kind of clarify some of that information. As Amy mentioned, a lot of things are changing rapidly. So what we want to do is kind of clarify where the boundaries are with the EIDL program. Next slide, please. And just talk about some of the highlights so everyone is aware. A lot of people did apply under one of the two systems for EIDL applications. So the initial system, as many of you are aware that we're in the early days, the system did crash. They did streamline that. The reason it crashed is because they were not anticipating such a large volume of applicants at one time. However, you still should have received an application number. Please keep that application number with you at all times when you are contacted as a refer to that application number if you have to call the disaster customer service number. We are going to give those links. I actually, Michelle from the chamber was nice enough to say she can post those and or email those out to the participants. So we'll make sure you get those informational links, as well as Amy mentioned, with things changing rapidly. I also gave some informational links to the SBA website where you can actually opt in for updates. Please, I urge you to, especially as a small business owner, opt in for those because they are sending out real-time updates. As Amy also mentioned, stuff came out this morning and last night as changes are pushing through. So far, EIDL in the last 14 days has issued the same amount of loans as the SBA has done in 14 years, which shows you the volume that the SBA is trying to assist in small business owners. So just as some points of clarification on the EIDL loan, for small businesses, it's a 3.75% interest rate at a fixed rate. For your nonprofits, it is 2.75, and that is extended up to a 30-year term on that loan. Now remember, a lot of confusion happened when people were filling out the application. That's not your total dollar amount that you were putting in on the initial application. When they streamlined the second application portal, that number was grayed out, so you could not put in how much you were actually trying to request. A processor is going to work with you. I know some people were already in the initial screening phases and were in contact with someone. They do reach out from the disaster team to work with you on that time horizon as a business. At this point, one of the updates are they're not accepting new applications, but they are still working through the log that they had acquired previously of those of you on this call that may have applied or know someone that applied. The advance, just to clarify on that, the EIDL advance was a forgivable amount as a grant up to $10,000. How they restructured that is for a small business owner, it was still up to $10,000, but it was going to be $1,000 per FTE. So if I'm a small business owner and I have 8 FTEs, I would get up to the $8,000 of the $10,000 EIDL advance. Those funds, as mentioned, as you can see in the bottom of the slide, that go through the advance loan will not have to be repaid. This is through the federal government lending. This is not through the bank. That's another thing we want to make sure we were clarifying. And you also do not have to accept the loan if they issue it. As new programs are being worked on, and if something else comes out shortly that is more beneficial to your business, and then you are offered the idle loan amount, you can decline that at that time. And also be aware there's no early prepayment penalty. So if you get the loan and the circumstances change, you can pay off that loan with no prepayment penalty. Next slide, please. Talking about idle criteria, initially, there's been a lot of questions, and we put this out because we're trying to reach the largest number of small businesses information-wise. Is a lot of people said that they got declined initially or worried about their credit score. SBA and the disaster team specifically have been working to get some of those initial declined applicants approved. They had within 6 months to submit further documentation for reconsideration, but I can report gladly that some of those initial declined applicants were able to get through the system in some cases already. So that is a big positive we wanted to share with the community. Next slide. So talking about the collateral requirements, another point of confusion was collateral needed. Obviously, the SBA understands everyone was in need for this due to COVID-19. However, not everyone had collateral. So they were personal guaranteed loans up to $25,000 where no collateral was required. However, anything over $25,000, SBA was looking to secure any amount of collateral possible, but they were not trying to decline loans for lack of collateral. One of the things I do want to mention with that said is some businesses forgot they may have some large equipment and machinery that could have also be used as collateral. Next slide, please. Some additional information is talking about the idle loans. As I mentioned before, it comes from the U.S. Treasury, not the banks. And one of the things I wanted to list here is that loan site that was revamped. If you were applied under the new system, you cannot go into the, you cannot go in and use that to check your application status. Those that were under the old system were being told you could still track based on your application numbers. There was no cost to apply and no obligation to take the loan if offered. Next slide. So this is one of the things we want to highlight. We have some partners in the Dayton area that may have joined us on this call that may have had a previous disaster loan due to the tornadoes, or if you know anyone that experienced one of the earthquakes or hurricanes down in the south or out to our west that had previous disaster loans, you could apply for this disaster loan as it is a separate disaster. And the state of Ohio was declared a disaster area, which you had to be in to qualify, as well as being affected by COVID-19. The loans would not be consolidated, but you could still apply for another loan as it relates to COVID-19. Next slide, please. So one of the big things I want to highlight here, big takeaway, is the disaster customer service. Now, obviously, all of us out here in the field in the SBA are being refocused on helping small businesses in this time of need. However, the disaster team specifically has access to some of the disaster systems where you're applying. So disaster customer service at sba.gov. We're also going to provide, whether it be in the chat feature or through email, I'm not sure which one yet, we will make sure all participants get access to all the website links, resource links, phone numbers, as well as some of my counterparts in the Columbus district office, direct phone numbers. Obviously, right now we have close to 100 participants. We want to give you a couple phone numbers so all 100 participants aren't calling just my phone number. That way everyone can get through to someone in a timely fashion. Next slide, please. Okay, talking about partners in the community. Obviously, the Chamber of Commerce has done great to get a lot of information out to the community, but also know that we work with the SBDC, the Small Business Development Center, SCORE chapters, Women Business Centers, and Veterans Business Outreach. Should you need additional assistance, there's a direct link below on this slide that shows you how to get there. Or if you just go to sba.gov, there's the local assistance tab that you can put in your zip code. It'll tell you the most local assistance for one of our resource partners. Next slide, please. So here's where I want to go into the Paycheck Protection Program or Paycheck Protection Payment Program, PPP. Next slide. This is a loan that's designed for working capital. Now, this goes directly through our lending partners in the community. As many of you know, small businesses were able to apply starting April 3rd. April 10th was the date for sole proprietors. So with that said, obviously as a new program was rolled out and created in 5 days or less, they were still writing SOPs and getting some of the final guidance that weekend after April 3rd. Some banks did not start accepting applications until the Monday after. Who could apply is small businesses with less than 500 employees. We may have some restaurants on the phone call, restaurant owners. If you're bigger than that, but you have less than 500 employees in a given location, you could still qualify in some cases. That's where we encourage people. And I know I did share our list of local lenders with the chamber, the regional chamber. I know they were putting that out with people that were asking. Now remember, those were lenders in the area that were 7A and 504 SBA lenders previously. We also have some lenders in the community that may have not been active doing that in the last year or two, but they came on board and started helping process PPP. As long as they were federally insured and applied through us, they could do that. However, that's why we tell everyone always you should be checking with your bank to see if they're participating in these programs before you look to other banks, because some banks, because of the high volume, they were not taking new customers unless you were a current business customer. Next slide, please. So this is where you go to the SBA lender. Always consult your local lender first. And then the loan applications right now, that was, next slide, I actually want to show the date until June 30th. One of the big deals with this is you had until June 30th to bring back your payroll levels or your salary levels to what they were between, let me get you that exact date, February 15th and April 26th. This program was designed to bring employees back on to allow employers to pay them. Now, we understand in some cases that there were employees that were let go that have gone on to unemployment, and they may make more on unemployment. However, it's your full salary levels to bring back to that date, not necessarily the exact staff. We understand it's not in everyone's best interest to go back to work at this time, and some businesses aren't able to reopen to pay them. However, this was a program that was rolled out and has a bit of forgiveness as it relates to payroll costs, interest on mortgage and rent and utilities for business owners as an incentive to bring their staff back. And those loan payments were going to be deferred for 6 months, and then no collateral or personal guarantees required whatsoever in this program. And then the forgiveness was based on the employer being able to bring the employees back during those dates that I mentioned. You have 8 weeks after the promissory note was signed for your staffing levels. And the interest rate was 1% fixed on a 2-year term. Next slide, please. So one thing I want to roll into now is debt relief program. The reason I'm using these blue slide place markers is to make sure everyone kind of sees the difference. There's several programs out there that not everyone was aware of, and some people initially weren't aware you could apply to multiple programs at once. So one of the big things to kind of reiterate here is debt relief as well. Whether you have an SBA loan or a loan with a local lending partner, talk to them. A lot of lenders are giving automatic deferments, and you can request that as well. SBA was giving deferments with the lending partners on SBA loans, as well as SBA will pay the principal and interest on new 7A loans issued prior to September 27th of 2020. And then the SBA will pay principal and interest on current 7A loans for a period of 6 months. Next slide, please. So important contact information. These are only just part of the resource links that I'll be providing, and I've shared with the chamber to make sure all the participants have. Again, the disaster customer service number is on there, as well as a link to our resource partners, and then some additional funding programs. Which also brings to mind, I want to tell everyone the U.S. Treasury has a great frequently asked questions page as well. As you know, the SBA and the U.S. Treasury are working hand in hand on a lot of this, so please also check out their website. They do have an option where you can opt in for their updates as well, and you'll receive those emails in real time as they have updates to the programs and information. But the frequently asked questions are great because some of the stuff already in there may be something on your mind, and you can just get it directly from their page. Next slide, please. And one of the biggest things we want to stress, as mentioned in the very beginning, things are changing day to day, as Amy pointed out. We want everyone to stay safe. Please see how you can use us as the SBA, your resource partners, for information, but stay safe. And we look forward to circling back with the Chamber as we get new updates and things that we can share publicly that'll help our small business community.
Joshua, thank you. That was very helpful as you walked through it. There are a couple of points in there. We've certainly heard there's been some confusion over there are new things that are continuing to evolve. Can we apply for multiple programs? And so that clarification is really just helpful. So thank you.
Can I clarify one thing? I'm sorry, Amy.
Sure, please.
So to clarify one thing on those other programs is some of the people that did ask us, hey, can I apply to the EIDL Advance and the PPP? The answer is yes. You just had to work with your lenders, and also if you use a CPA, to make sure you weren't commingling the forgiven funds on the EIDL Advance for payroll and not using the same money to pay the same exact things with the PPP. But could you apply to both and get granted both? Yes. The short answer is yes. But always remember, with the PPP, you have to apply or ask for forgiveness through the banker, and then you will have to submit certain documentations from them. Now, if there's questions at the end, of course, we have our information. And Amy, I know we were on a time crunch, so if I spoke too fast for anyone, reach out to the SBA. I just wanted to make sure we were getting as much information out in a short amount of time as I was asked to come on yesterday. So I want to give these updates in real time, of course.
Great, thank you. Joshua, one or two quick questions before we transition. I know there's some confusion over, so who is ultimately responsible to ensure that the employers are maintaining a certain number of employees?
So the employer themselves are going to make sure that they document that, and they'll have to submit documentation to their banker for their forgiveness. So they will have to submit payroll documentation to make sure that they are in line with what is being forgiven. And as you saw on the slide where I spoke about PPP, it's certain interest in utilities as well, but there is a certain number of percentage that has to go to payroll because of the high subscription of this program to make sure they're getting maximum amount of forgiveness on that portion of the loan.
Sure. Great. Thank you. And a final question, because I know this is certainly top of mind for a lot of people, of certainly the news this morning has created some concern for people. What if things were already in process with their bank, or what should they know on that front?
So right now, as of this morning, we are still getting information. I was on a call 5 seconds before I hopped on here, and right now they're not accepting new applications, but we have had a lot of people, and thanks for bringing that up, because as some clarification, I've talked to 3 people today that got a deposit in their bank where they had already been in the queue and applied, but they didn't get the email communication. So I urge people, if you know that you've gotten previous communication that you were in the process, check the bank, because they're making those electronic deposits and it's hitting you faster than the email explaining the deposit and the advance on the EIDL loan. Great.
Joshua, thank you so much. We know that you are a great leader here locally, and you're certainly gracious with your time to jump in so last minute to provide us this real-time update is very, very helpful. And as Joshua mentioned earlier, following this webinar today, we will send an email to all of the participants with all of these links and resources that are available. So Joshua, thank you again for joining us during this incredibly busy time for you. And I promise not every single person will call you directly from here.
Appreciate it. Thanks again, and happy to be back here in the Cincinnati area, my hometown. Some of you on this line know me. I've been in the SBA for 4 years, just back to Cincinnati for a year now. I transferred back from our South Florida district office, so I want to bring a wealth of knowledge to the Cincinnati area and help everyone grow once COVID-19 kind of minimizes in this area.
We will certainly stay connected. So thank you so much, Joshua. Beyond the SBA, we are certainly fortunate that there are a number of other resources that are available for our small and minority-owned businesses. There are resources and opportunities truly for you to consider. We'd like to bring back Darren Reedus to share with us what are some of these additional resources, and share with us a little bit about some of the playbooks that are being designed to specifically help minority-owned businesses. Darren.
Yes, thank you, Amy. Yeah, so I want to just begin to talk about a few additional resources and also just other considerations as we think about just moving forward in this time. Let me first say that through the Cincinnati Chamber's website, there are a number of resources. There's CincinnatiChamber.com. Much of this playbook activity that we're talking about, you will find there. And so I'm going to just talk about a few alternative sources as part of our discussion today, along with, again, on the site, there's so many other lending opportunities, et cetera, throughout the region. So if we can perhaps pull up my slide as well on additional resources, that would be great. So again, just highlight a couple of non-traditional sources here, which you'll also find on our website. And so Facebook has announced a $100 million grant opportunity that is far-reaching. And so this has not yet hit our region. I believe it's in the next couple of days. And so these slides, as well as, of course, our website will be made available. But you just kind of follow the link and follow the instructions. And I believe these are like $10,000 grants. Not all of what we're going to share in some of this quick conversation will be relevant to everyone on the line. But do keep in mind that there are a number of resources out there. I've chosen here just to extract a few that may not be always top of mind and are some alternative sources. So Facebook is certainly one of those. GoFundMe is another. And so this is for those that are familiar with, crowdfunding and things of that nature. This is where if you raise at least $500, those dollars will be matched. And so again, just follow the link and follow the instructions. These are available to entrepreneurs all over, but certainly, of course, here in our community as well, over and above our state and regional resources. Next slide, please. If we can also, think we might have skipped one, but that's okay. There we go. So just additional, and I think Derek may speak to one or two of these as well, but these are also just additional sort of crowdfunding type opportunities. And I wanted to highlight these because, again, these are not necessarily always top of mind, and they are specific in certain cases to minority businesses and underserved entrepreneurs. And so a particular response to COVID-19. And so again, there's so much of this information that's laid out on our website, but I did want to call some attention here to some of these crowdfunding resources. Next slide, please. So I'm going to shift gears just a tad from the standpoint of, in addition to lending resources, grant resources, there's a number of just tips and considerations I really wanted to make sure we covered today, and think about it from the standpoint of just readiness. We know and we heard that the current sort of PPP loan is kind of hit a pause. And of course, there's all sorts of discussion around another round of that. And so my first point here is to really just encourage everyone to prepare. For those that perhaps were not, for different reasons, able to participate in the initial round, please, I just urge you to get prepared. And so continue to get your business financials in order. So much of what you're hearing, whether it's the state or various other lending initiatives throughout the region, of course, require that we really get financial statements, your receivables and payables, and understand your business financials. We're here to help with that. The various partners that I mentioned at the very beginning of this session through the Cincinnati Minority Business Collaborative are here to really help to get your business financials in order. All of these efforts, by and large, are requiring, of course, a review and understanding of the financials. Please work with your bank, your customers, and your suppliers. there is capital available just within the current realm of what you do. Talking to your current bank if you have an existing obligation to have your payments deferred. Banks are very open to deferring payments. When you think about your customers, oftentimes your customers can work with you in so many ways. Suppliers can work with you in so many ways. Very similar to that, right below, your landlord, your insurance companies, your utilities, etc. Please don't ignore these. This might to some degree seem like common sense, but I urge you not to ignore these. By simply having payments deferred, in so many cases, it's almost like having money brought in. And so these are things that you have the ability to do right on your own. Get creative. This next bullet point here, enhance your social media presence. Operate and explore how you might operate more virtually in this environment that we're in. Creativity is the order of the day at this point. I mentioned crowdfunding platforms, so these are very just powerful and available, accessible opportunities. Network with other business owners that are seeing a surge in their business. You'll hear some of that today. There are certain businesses actually doing very well right now. And so networking and figuring out how you might partner with and strategically align with other business owners is a great time for that. So I highly encourage networking. Bartering, this doesn't get talked about a lot, but when you think about how might you take advantage of this time to perhaps strengthen your website or deepen your systems, bartering with services with IT and web professionals to enhance your e-commerce capabilities at this time. This next piece, gift cards. I mean, there's a particular effort. This is more tailored to restaurants and bars, which is also on our website, but this dining bond initiative is really whereby, think about it, whereby you offer your customers the ability to pay for services now that you honor at a future date. And so for your loyal customers out there that may want to continue to support you, their ability to buy services at a discount today, you honor those services at a time down the road, but it allows you to bring in cash immediately. Next slide. Along those same lines, just to encourage everyone to really take this time to reinvent your business. There's a major question mark, as we all know, around what this new normal will look like. And so those of us that are really being creative and mindful of this opportunity now to really think about how might we reinvent ourselves. So what might a technology enhancement do for your business going forward? This could be another part of that bartering that I mentioned momentarily. How might technology enhance how you do business? What new strategic partnerships might you create going forward? How might a business that you once considered a competitor now become a collaborator? This is often low-hanging fruit in so many areas, but again, thinking creatively at this time about how you might do things differently when you come out of this scenario. Again, what might a virtual version of your business look like long-term? I think about, and I highlight here just within the restaurant industry as an example, how might you teach what you normally cook virtually, help your customers prepare at home what they might come to you to normally receive. And so just another way to stay connected to your customers is, again, thinking creatively. What bold moves might you consider today that you perhaps put on hold previously? Oftentimes we might put a certain type of business, investor, potential partner on a pedestal. Well, we'll reach out to them when all things line up for me. But you'll be surprised at how often the same folks that you put on a pedestal are willing to connect with you today. And so make some bold moves at this time. And so before I get my friend Derek on the line to join me, he's got some great ideas and suggestions himself. I just want to stress that this is a time we're talking about seeking additional resources and recognize that you are your greatest resource. So I can't stress enough to be resourceful. That is, there's so much that you have the ability to do yourself. So be resourceful in how you approach this time. So with that, Amy, turn it back over to you and get my friend Derek on the line to join me.
Absolutely. And before we bring Derek on, there were a couple questions that came in that I thought might be really helpful to follow up for other people to hear. One of them was, it seems that there is a fair amount of conversation around helping the larger businesses. So the question was, what if you have 1 to 5 employees? Are many of these programs and resources you mentioned available for the smaller entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so I'll touch on that, and that's really a great segue to Derek, absolutely. So all of those crowdfunding and the Facebooks and all those sorts of things were actually also designed for businesses with 5 or less employees. So it is not just, if you will, for larger scale by any means, but that is also a fantastic segue to Derek, who really focuses on that exclusively.
Well, I think that's a great point. Derek, it's great to see you. And whether it's virtual or in person, always good to see you. And thank you for being with us today. For folks that haven't met Derek, he is Managing Partner and Development Director of Mortar, and also a key player with the Cincinnati Minority Business Collaborative. And truly just, Derek, I've always appreciated your collaborative effort. You're willing to go that extra mile and jump in when people really needed you. So thanks for being with us today to share some of your information and knowledge.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Amy. It's also a pleasure to see you. And Darren, thank you for this opportunity to join this conversation today. As was mentioned, my name is Derek Brazil, co-founder, development director of an organization named Mortar that's been in the Cincinnati region for 6 years now. And we focus on helping those small micro businesses, the Main Street mom and pop type of businesses that typically would be a lifestyle business or the kind of business that wouldn't have a ton of employees. We do a couple of things. We have an entrepreneurship program that for 16 weeks teaches the nuances of entrepreneurship in a culturally sensitive and culturally relevant way. We've graduated 21 classes of this program with 300 graduates. I am a small business owner myself, and I am also a graduate of that program. I took the advice that Darren just mentioned not too long ago of taking an idea and pivoting that idea to fit the current moment that we're in. And I can talk about that more in a second to give you an example of how even myself, I'm taking some of these practices that Darren just mentioned and applying it to my own business. We have some pop-up spaces across the city where people can test their ideas in commercial corridors. They're called Brick. We have one in Over the Rhine, one in Walnut Hills. And we just opened a space in Uptown called Pause. And it's a partnership between 4 of our graduate businesses who are working together to share space and to sell products out of that one location. We have a revolving fund that we use to invest in small businesses all across the city. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. When all this started to happen, we wanted to see from our own graduates what the needs really were. So we sent out a survey. And from that survey, we heard from many of our graduates that what they need right now, like many of you, I'm assuming, is cash. And that cash is needed for a variety of reasons, whether it's payroll or utilities or whatever it is. It seems like the big need that small businesses in our region are needing right now is cash. And there are some options that are out there that I think if you're smart and strategic, you can access those resources in a way that can help your business and not take too much time away from doing the things that actually make your business run. The one that I wanted to focus our time on today was one named Kiva Zip, it's named Kiva. And Kiva is similar, I would say, to a GoFundMe. But the way that it works is you can utilize the Kiva platform. It's a platform that's been around for several years now. It was really championed by a guy named Muhammad Yunus, who wanted to try to make capital accessible to people in third world countries around the world. And that same approach is now available here in the United States. And it's for people just like you and I, or those of us who might not have larger small businesses, maybe 1 to 5 employees, to leverage the power of the crowd to access low interest loan capital up to $15,000. I think some of these larger things that are out there, like Facebook's, and there was a Verizon grant fund that was announced a week or so ago. Those are great resources, and it's definitely worthwhile to put your hat in the ring. but a program like Kiva is one that you can personalize, that you can use your own networks of people who know you, who support you. It doesn't have the same red tape that you might experience with traditional resources. So you can utilize those things, utilize the Kiva platform, and you can access those resources in a relatively quick amount of time. So I'll give you a few examples. We had a person from our graduate network who wanted a $10,000 loan through Kiva. And what they had to do is they had to create an application. And that's one thing I am more than happy to help you do. It's something I'm sure a lot of other folks would be more than happy to help you do. But you have to create this application, and the application is a narrative that talks about who you are, talks about your business, and it talks about how you want to spend that money. Due to the COVID-19 crisis that we're in, Kiva has actually increased that dollar amount to $15,000, where it was previously $10,000. So you create this application, you create this profile, you have some cool photos of yourself and your business, and then you have to do the internal crowdfunding piece, where you have to find, I think I saw the number is now 40 people in your own personal network who can loan you around $25. For a lot of people, that can be a barrier, and I understand that, and it's been a barrier for a lot of the graduates who have come out of Mortar's programming. So I want to say that I empathize with people who may not be able to say, I know 40 people who can loan me $25, but there are ways to be creative, and I'm more than happy to talk to you to give you some ideas for how you can be creative and how you can leverage social media, word of mouth advertising, et cetera, to identify the folks who can make up that initial set of 40 people who can help your profile move to the next stage. And that next stage, after you find those people, is it becomes live. And then anybody around the world who's able to find your profile can loan you $25. The cool thing about doing this in Cincinnati right now is there are trustees like Mortar, like an organization here named LISC. It stands for Local Initiative Support Corporation. And you can go through them. And once they endorse your profile as a trustee, every dollar that you raise is matched dollar for dollar to help you complete that fundraising round. So after that, I've told that the percentage is around 80% of people that go live receive that full amount of funding. So that's a pretty high percentage in my opinion. So that's a very localized opportunity that you can use right now that leverages your own personal networks, people that know you. It's a non-traditional route, but I think can help you become successful. But the next thing I want to say that I think is really important is just like this mindset of success that I think is really important right now. The world is hard enough as it is, but I think that there's a silver lining. And that silver lining, in my opinion, is that the rules of engagement, if you will, are changing. There are opportunities for businesses like my own. And I'll really quickly talk about that. I know we're probably short on time. I started a taqueria last year, and I went to Mexico City. I came back to Cincinnati, and I bought a taco cart, and I wanted to build this business. I don't come from wealth. I don't come from privilege. I don't come from any of those things. So I've had to be very creative with pop-up windows, with things here and there to try to build my business. And I anticipated having a traditional street food business before all this stuff happened. And I personally had to pivot. And now I'm focusing on something else. And I think that the same opportunity applies to a lot of us if you have that mindset of opportunity to try to identify creative ways that you can, like Darren was saying, gift cards or bartering or Kiva Zip or whatever it is to help your businesses get to the next level. And the really beautiful thing is the Minority Business Accelerator and Mortar, African American Chamber, and a lot of these other organizations that make up this Cincinnati Minority Business Collaborative are here to help you. And the expertise that we can bring to bear for you, I think, is one of the best of any ecosystem in the United States. So I would reach out to us if we can help you. I will personally say, from Mortar's perspective, we're more than happy to do that. And I will pass it back to you guys for any questions, or we can talk about that later.
Thank you so much. And Derek, honestly, I'm ready for a taco right now. I'm quite hungry. So thank you for that moment. The Cincinnati Minority Business Collaborative is really a strong asset here in our community. Do one of you mind sharing a little bit more? What if somebody wanted to get involved? What does that look like? And just a little more insight would be great.
Absolutely. Easiest thing to do is just to go to the website, Cincinnati-NBC.org. And so it is a collaborative that has existed for many years at this point, and really now beginning to just become just stronger as we move on. And so it's really trying to, as Derek mentioned, just collaboratively leverage all of our resources to really optimize outcomes for minority businesses. And so Cincinnati-NBC.org is the best way just to engage, and we'll be very responsive upon doing so. I would also just throw out real quickly, I know we're kind of, again, short on time here, that all of our organizations in this collaborative are also working together behind the scenes to explore alternative and additional funding sources for minority businesses. So, and as much as we've talked about a lot of things that are already available, we recognize that there are still likely to be gaps. And so do know that all of these organizations are working together trying to solve for those gaps in some very creative ways. And so much more information to come along those lines, but do know that you have organizations here that understand the unique needs and are actively trying to get those needs met.
Great, Darren, thank you so much. That is helpful to know that, and really the tools you put together today were great. It's wonderful hearing from the SBA. It's also knowing some of these different resources that exist, and also the collaborative efforts that are happening to say, let's keep this moving forward. A question came in. Someone is really wondering, if you don't mind, how would you define minority-owned business?
So the easiest way to think about that, especially for the collaborative itself, is the federal definition of minority. And so it is pretty far-reaching, if you will. So African-American, Asian-American, Hispanic-American, Pacific Islander, it's a broad, just if you look at the federal definition of minority, you will encompass all that minority means to the collaborative.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you both. Derek, thank you for being with us, and Darren as well. Just knowing, again, the collaborative efforts. And Derek, I love that you mentioned the silver lining, and that's exactly what we have to all look for here. Is there are new rules of engagement right now, and what are some of these silver linings based on what we are experiencing? And with that, we are excited to transition to hear from a couple of local leaders that firsthand have had some really interesting stories to share based on those silver linings and things that are happening. So again, Darren and Derek, thank you so much. We would like to transition and bring on Josh Williams. He's the founder, owner, and CEO of Surgery Health Solutions. And Josh, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's great to see you, and appreciate you taking the time. If you wouldn't mind starting off and just share with our listeners a little bit, explain your business. What are you doing?
So Surgery Health Solutions is a medical supplier of instrument cleaning supplies. Pretty much once a facility has a surgery, those instruments then need to be turned around and reused again, and they need to be disinfected and cleaned and re-sterilized. So we provide a lot of those products to aid in that process.
That's great. And I imagine you could certainly be a big part of that, the process right now. I imagine you're getting a fair amount of calls. Have things picked up? Or tell us a little bit about how is this impacting you all?
Actually, so unfortunately, it's the opposite, because one of the main things that we do are supply these products for elective surgeries. Wow. As we know, the nation has been shut down 100% on all elective surgeries. So you can have a typical facility doing 400 to 500 surgeries per week, and that same facility is now doing maybe a tenth of those. So if we primarily supply those products, so you can imagine what that's doing to the overall volume of sales and different things like that at this time. And so what we've been able to do is kind of pivot in an interim situation and help businesses, medical facilities, and places of that nature with their PPE needs, like their face masks and their face shields and their isolation gowns and things like that, things we haven't typically ventured into at this point, but that we have access to by being a registered medical supplier.
Excellent. Thank you. This is just a perfect example. If we think about a business that essentially on the outset, you could think, oh, they're in the prime spot. But when you really dial in and think about the fact that you're really in that elective space, absolutely you're impacted. And I think many, many businesses are pivoting and innovating and trying to adjust to these times. So tell us a little bit more. How did you, as a leader, and when you're working with your team members, how did you make that shift? What did it look like? Help inspire and walk us through that kind of process that may help spark some innovation for other leaders.
So basically we're in that space already. So what we've been able to do is just kind of shift our focus away from what we normally are placing purchase orders for on a daily basis to now looking at, okay, let's conserve some of these resources and then let's move forward with contacting all the different health organizations in the area, in the region, that are having some troubles with acquiring some of those products, either because they just don't have the access, they don't know where to go, their supply chain has been limited in their availability of those products. And then also you have the sense of the government just, distributing funds on a set basis. So you have different things like that, which means that if a facility is dependent on a lot of those products and they can't get them, I mean, that's why we're in a pandemic, essentially. So for us, it's basically been, we're in a good position where the company is, where we're positioned because of our connections and our contacts globally. By being a medical provider, we do source products from all over the world. And so it was, I won't say it was easy. It's been a huge capital constraint because, I mean, every single company that has these type of credentials are rushing to get these products. So that market has really shot up overnight and it goes up daily. But so basically just, reaching out to a lot of the different health organizations, offering different products that we can get, and just basically trying to get any requests from any other facilities that are looking for products or are looking for ways to kind of help combat this situation that we're in.
Josh, that's great. Thank you so much. A question has come in from our audience wondering, have you experienced any difficulties in getting supplies from the manufacturers? This person has heard that there may be some stockpiling of PPE. Just can you comment on that a bit?
Absolutely. So we've had some delays, and the delays aren't specifically with the manufacturers themselves, although they are working at a capacity that they're not used to. So of course there are delays that will be there, but the supply chain has been changed. So not as many flights are being allowed in or out of the country at this point from an export-import level. So Surgery Health Solutions is a FDA registered importer exporter. So we're allowed to bring items in and ship items out of the country. So fortunately, we don't have the burden of going through those problems and headaches that some organizations have been dealing with. But in regards to that, there just are fewer planes flying. Right. So if you're not willing to pay whatever that premium is for that space, then you just kind of get bumped to the back until that space opens up. So that has been a challenge. And just the way that a lot of businesses are wanting to do business today, we're in a cash crisis right now. Right. So a lot of companies are not giving the typical 30, 60-day net terms to pay for goods. They want money up front. Right. And if you don't have that money, then you don't have those products. Mm-hmm. So so that has been a problem in different places, especially with us going into areas where we're not normally purchasing these products or have a relationship with this specific manufacturer for those specific items. But fortunately, we have great relationships all over. So we've been able to navigate it as best as we can.
Great. And you brought up a great point. Having those relationships before a pandemic is just so critical. And it was mentioned earlier Do you think about new ways to partner with people and new collaborative efforts? Maybe they've been competitors in the past, but what does it look like now to think differently about partnering and having those relationships? Josh, you're certainly in the midst of kind of the sweet spot in terms of the healthcare crisis. If you were to give some advice to people who are in very different types of businesses, however, what type of innovation and what type of advice would you give to other business leaders in your same shoes, trying to really just stay day to day and make a difference and think about the future?
Right. I definitely wanted to chime in when Darren was speaking about trying to remain innovative and using this time, because it is a slow period for us. And I'm sure it's a slow period for a lot of other businesses in different areas. And we're in healthcare and it's still a slow period.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine in areas that have no need right now, like hospitality and things like that. So one thing that we're doing, so we're actually working daily on, so we have a new website and things like that we're getting ready to launch. And so they were supposed to launch like probably about a month ago, but we've taken this time because it's like, wait a minute, we're not going to get all this focus right now on anything new that we launch. So let's not let that get overshadowed. Let's go back to the drawing board a little bit. A lot of these things are already done and pretty much ready to roll out, but let's just fine tune some things. Let's take a little extra time. Let's, give a little more attention to detail. Let's try to make as many new connections as we possibly can during this time. And basically come out of all of this with, new products, new, brand focus, new relationships, new customers and things like that. Because that's another thing that we're now working with different organizations who were not previously customers prior to all of this going on. So we're adding new customers weekly, which is absolutely great. Because it basically limited or it shortened that period of time that it normally takes us to get a customer. So yeah, just as to point out, literally what Darren was saying was, focus on your technology, see what you can do in this time frame. Try to make relationships with other businesses because everyone's hurting right now. So the whole bartering thing is really, really a great method to use right now. If you don't have the capital to go get new websites or new marketing materials created, maybe there's something your business does that another company can't afford themselves right now, but can give you those resources that you need. So that's definitely what we are in the process of doing on a daily basis.
Thank you so much for reinforcing just a great message there. It's all about relationships. It's all about taking that pause in that moment. Think about bartering. How can you be resourceful? Josh, thank you so much for being with us and really appreciate your insights. I'm excited.
I was happy to do it.
Well, good. We loved having you here. So thank you very much. And we're excited to bring it home today. To hear some final inspiration with Bridget Harris, the president of BTH Construction Delivery. Bridget, thanks for being here, and start off by telling us a little bit about your business as well.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate this time. My business is a design and construction firm. We specialize in construction management of commercial and residential construction projects.
Wonderful. How have you all been impacted? What looks different 2 months ago than it does today for you?
Well, I'll be honest with you. On the day that the governor said that they were doing a shutdown, I thought that our business was not essential, but it actually is. And so the first thing I did, of course, was go to the website, look through the list, and I thought, okay, construction's not on this list. So first thing I did was call the contractors on all the active construction projects I had and kind of talk through it with them and see whether they plan to keep going. Because it's a collaborative effort. If they were not going to continue, then my business could not continue.
Sure.
And so because some of the projects that I had were small enough, a few of them were willing to stay on. The larger projects have been put on hold, but it's been kind of nice to shift my focus back to those smaller projects. And because I'm also a design firm, I've also been given a little bit more time to focus on some of the architectural projects I have. And so that's been nice. So I could not even have expected this at this time, because usually this is when construction is ramping up. So it's just been interesting to see the shift.
Sure. And how about, speak a little bit more to some of that shift or innovation. We know that even when being an essential business, you're having to do things differently. So what are some things that as a team you're really feeling have just worked well for you and your business through this time?
So I think the interesting thing is that I'm so used to being able to call other businesses and have them immediately respond to me, whether it's getting materials or getting, you know, different things I need for a project to move forward, whether it's, you know, sand or concrete or things like that. And typically I'm calling someone else at home, not actually at their business. So that's been interesting. Just the chain of supply has changed, and you know, my reach towards products has changed. So that has slowed down our projects a little bit. But I found that most people are happy to get the phone call because a lot of projects aren't happening. So they're, you know, even if they can't get it today, they're like, we'll get it, you know, as soon as we can. You know, they're excited to get some phone calls, and typically we pay on time, so they appreciate that. So that's been good. And it's kind of good because a lot of the contractors we work with are small as well. So we know getting that call, you know, could change, you know, their payroll for that week or whatever has happened, you know, as far as their schedules and how this has affected them as well. So that's been interesting. But that's very different because typically, you know, it would happen very differently, you know, in scheduling and things of that nature.
Sure. And Bridget, same question for you. If you were to give listeners kind of a tip or advice, if they're in similar position, an entrepreneur, a business owner, what tips or ideas would you give to other leaders right now?
I would say to definitely get creative. I have received a lot more phone calls about new projects than I expected. I think I was looking inward at all the things that had stopped. I didn't really expect to get a lot of phone calls about things that were either planning to happen or things of that nature at this time. So I have gotten a lot of phone calls from either competitors or different engineers and things of that I've worked with in the past, just kind of asking if I needed any assistance or if I wanted to partner on different types of projects that they would bid on that they maybe needed, you know, construction assistance with or needed me to be the GC on. So I didn't really expect that, but I think that is something that people need to be open to, or that they initiate themselves to reach out to people in your industry or, you know, in your industry adjacent, and, you know, just have those conversations about what it would look like to partner up so that nobody's sitting idle, because it's not necessary.
Great. Bridget, thank you. That is a wonderful exclamation point for today for us as we really think about it's all about those relationships, and it's about reaching out.
Yes.
And I think now more than ever, we need to reach out and really be creative and think about how we can work together. So Bridget Harris, President of BTH Construction Delivery, thanks again for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much. And truly a moment of thanks for our whole entire panel, Darren Reedus, Joshua Stutzman, Derek Brazil, Bridget Harris, and Josh Williams. What a great lineup today. Truly very informative and very inspirational as we think about how we navigate this time, and truly how we come out on the other side better and stronger leaders and stronger businesses. So thank you to all of our members that have also tuned in. We appreciate you being with us today. And if you're not a member, we highly recommend you look into membership. We are here to help you and your business through this time and certainly beyond. We will continue to educate and have a couple of upcoming sessions we hope you will join us for. Next week, do you need talent? Are you looking for a student that might be able to help you through some of this time? We'll have a conversation with some of our local universities on how they're doing some things differently and could be some real talent for you to consider. On Wednesday, we'll have an interactive session if you want to look at the sales and marketing, both now and in the future. What does that messaging look like? How do you position yourselves as we restart to come back together? So thanks again for being with us today. From all of us at the Cincinnati USA Regional Chamber, we wish you, your family, and your team good health through all of this time. Meanwhile, until we can be together again in person, stay safe, respect the social distancing, even with those you love, and please, as we sign off, go wash your hands again. Thanks so much.